Okay. Yesterday I filmed a lot, and it was not enjoyable. Yesterday there was a lot of me pressing desperately against the bars of a cage of my own creation, that kind of shit. And it was rough, and then it ended with me rereading this lovely passage, and I thought I would offer this up. Warm words for hard times. And yeah, just a gift for whenever you are having a hard time, Beck, and you need to hear a story told to you. It's not a full story, just a small section of this. Just enough to fit in our time limit. And I guess I should have had it. Let me just open it to where it was. If any of you are considering reading the Sirens of Titan, the Tyrants of Titan, highly recommend it. I'll be rereading it, I'm sure, and I reread this passage over and over again anytime I feel dark, hopeless. Where are we going? Where are we going? Small pause while I find it. Okay. For context, the two characters in this are named Boaz, my favorite character ever written, and Unk. They are trapped on a planet, Mercury. This is not really spoiling. Yeah. Oh, and there are little creatures on the planet called harmoniums. Unk scuttled down through the caves until he came upon Boaz's concert for the harmoniums. Unk was wild and bug-eyed with big news. He could not speak in a vacuum, so he hauled Boaz to the spaceship. There, in the inert atmosphere of the cabin, Unk told Boaz the message that meant escape from the caves. It was now Boaz's turn to react numbly. Boaz had thrilled to the slightest illusion of intelligence on the part of the harmoniums, but now, having heard the news that he was about to be freed from his prison, Boaz was strangely reserved. That explains that other message, said Boaz softly. What other message? Said Unk. Boaz held up his hands to represent a message that had appeared on the wall outside his home 4 earthling days before. Said, Boaz, don't go, said Boaz. He looked down self-consciously. We love you, Boaz. That's what it said. Boaz dropped his hands to his side, turned away as though turning away from unbearable beauty. I saw that, he said, and I had to smile. I looked at them sweet, gentle fellers on the wall there, and I says to myself, boys, how's old Boaz ever going to go anywhere? Old Boaz, he going to be stuck here for quite some time yet. It's a trap, said Unk. It's a what? Said Boaz. A trap, said Unk. A trick to keep us here. The comic book called Tweety and Sylvester was open on the table before Boaz. Boaz didn't answer Unk right away. He leafed through the ragged book instead. I expect, he said at last. Unk thought about the crazy appeal in the name of love. He did something he hadn't done for a long time. He laughed. He thought it was a hysterical ending for the nightmare, that the brainless membranes on the walls should speak of love. Boaz suddenly grabbed Unk, rattled poor Unk's dry bones. I'd appreciate it, Unk, said Boaz tautly, if you'd just let me think whatever I'm going to think about that message about how they love me. I mean, he said, he said, it don't necessarily have to make sense to you. I mean, he said, he said, there ain't really any call for you to say anything about it, one way or the other. I mean, he said, he said, these animals ain't necessarily your dish. You don't necessarily have to like 'em or understand 'em or say anything about 'em. I mean, said Boaz, said Boaz, the message wasn't addressed to you. It's me they said they loved. That lets you out. He let Unk go, turned attention to the comic book again. His broad, slab-muscled back amazed Unk. Living apart from Boaz, Unk had flattered himself into thinking he was a physical match for Boaz. He saw now what a pathetic delusion this had been. The muscles in Boaz's back slid over one another in slow patterns that were counterpoint to the quick movements of his page-turning fingers. You know so much about traps and things, said Boaz. How do you know there ain't some worse trap waiting for us if we go flying out of here? Before Unc could answer him, Boaz remembered that he had left the tape recorder playing and unguarded. Ain't nobody watching out for him at all, he cried. He left Unc, ran to rescue the harmoniums. While Boaz was gone, Unc made plans for turning the spaceship upside down. That was the solution to the puzzle of how to get out. That was what the harmoniums on the ceiling had said. Unc, turn ship upside down. And then he goes upon turning it upside down and stuff. I'll just skip that part. It's not important. The hole it would eventually find itself in would be the bottomless, sideless pit of space eternal. Boaz came into the upside-down ship, his arms loaded with dead harmoniums. He was carrying 4 quarts or more of the seeming dried apricots. Inevitably, he dropped some, and, in stooping to pick them up reverently, he dropped more. Tears were streaming down his face. You see, said Boaz. He was raging heartbrokenly against himself. Oop. I'm not going to change that. I'm still using this one. You see, said Boaz. He was raging heartbrokenly against himself. You see, Unc, he said. See what happens when somebody just runs off and forgets? Boaz shook his head. This ain't all of 'em, he said. This ain't near all of 'em. He found an empty carton that had once contained candy bars. He put the harmonium corpses into that. He straightened up, his hands on his hips. Just as Unc had been amazed by Boaz's physical condition, so now Unc was amazed by Boaz's dignity. Boaz, when he straightened up, was a wise, decent, weeping Hercules. Unc, by comparison, felt scrawny, rootless, and sore-headed. You want to do the dividing, Unc, said Boaz. Dividing, said Unc. Goofballs, food, soda pop, candy, said Boaz. Divide it all, said Unc. My God, there's enough of everything for 500 years. There had never been any talk of dividing things before. There had been no shortage and no threat of a shortage of anything. Half for you to take with you and half to leave here with me, said Boaz. Leave with you? Said Unc incredulously. You're coming with me, aren't you? Boaz held up his big right hand, and it was a tender gesture for silence, a gesture made by a thoroughly great human being. Don't truth me, Unc, said Boaz, and I won't truth you. He brushed away his tears with a fist. Unc had never been able to brush aside the plea about truthing. It frightened him. Some part of his mind warned him that Boaz was not bluffing, that Boaz really knew a truth about Unc that could tear him to pieces. Unc opened his mouth and closed it again. You come and tell me the big news, said Boaz. Boaz, you say, we're going to be free. And I get all excited and I drop everything I'm doing and I get set to be free. And I keep saying it over to myself about how I'm going to be free, said Boaz. And then I try to think what that's going to be like, and all I can see is people. They push me this way, then they push me that, and nothing pleases them. And they get madder and madder on account of nothing makes them happy. And they holler at me on account of I ain't made them happy. And we push and pull some more. And then, all of a sudden, says Boaz, I remember all the crazy little animals I've been making so happy, so easy with music. And I go find thousands of them, lying around dead, on account of Boaz forgot all about him. He was so excited about being free. And every one of them lost lives I could have saved if I'd have just kept my mind on what I was doing. And then I say to myself, said Boaz, I ain't never been nothing good to people, and people never been nothing good to me. So what I want to be free in crowds of people for? And then I knew what I was going to say to you, Unc, when I got back here, said Boaz. Boaz now said it. I found me a place where I can do good without doing any harm. And I can see I'm doing good. And them I'm doing good for know I'm doing it, and they love me, Unc, as best they can. I found me a home. And when I die down here someday, said Boaz, I'm going to be able to say to myself, Boaz, you made millions of lives worth living. Ain't nobody ever spread more joy. You ain't got an enemy in the universe. Boaz became for himself the affectionate mama and papa he'd never had. You go to sleep now, he said to himself, imagining himself on a stone deathbed in the caves. You're a good boy, Boaz, he said. Good night. You know, Oh, 12 minutes. Will you forgive me, Beck? I love you. I love you all. Peace. Stay cursed.